Thank you. So my first slide, please. Okay, so this is the title of my presentation, Olive Oil and the Heritage of the Spanish Mediterranean Diet, Priorities for Research and Education. So these are the 4 parts that I have prepared. First, I will review some new epidemiologic evidence in Spain. Then I will deal with the MIDAS, that is the score that we developed in PREDIMED to upgrade the adherence to the Mediterranean diet. This is a screener that we can use as score to measure how large is the adherence to the Mediterranean diet in the current Spanish population. And then the contrast between the beliefs of the Spanish population and the reality. And then just 2 slides about sustainability and economic that we have developed in the context of the SUN cohort. Starting with the epidemiologic evidence in Spain, perhaps you don't know this paper. This paper is the joint analysis, well, the separate analysis, but put together in the same paper of 3 prospective cohorts in Spain. The Aragon Workers' Health Study, that is smaller, and it measures only non-invasive assessment of atherosclerosis in relationship with the consumption of olive oil. And then the SUN cohort, that is what we developed in the University of Navarra with Walter Willett and Franju and Alberto Asquerio as advisors. It is a cohort of now with 23,000 participants. And then the EPIC Spain. In the 3 cohorts, we saw a protection against cardiovascular disease by olive oil. In the SUN cohort, I need to acknowledge that these results are related only when we included both adjudicated and probable cases. So we saw this effect, and the conclusion was that higher consumption of total olive oil was associated with a lower risk of CVD and stroke. The highest benefit was found for consumptions between 20 and 30 grams per day. So, and there was some hints of a stronger protection by virgin olive oil. Then we published several years ago this meta-analysis with studies specifically focusing on olive oil and cardiovascular disease in several countries. We included here both case control and cohort studies. And now we found a protection, especially for stroke. And now this is submitted currently. This is a meta-analysis only with cohort studies and the PREDIMED randomized trial. And you've got here cohorts from many different countries for several cohorts of the EPIC study, the Nurses Health Study and the Health Professional Follow-up Study by Marta Wash Ferrer. That was the only study that also adjusted for other elements of the Mediterranean diet. Studies conducted in the NIH AARP by SUN, and 3 studies conducted in Spain by Carolina Donat Vargas, the SUN study, the EPIC study, and the Enrique study. And everything was standardized to a consumption of 25 grams per day. You see that the results are not very homogeneous, but nevertheless, when you exclude studies with a very long follow-up and without repeated measurements of diet, you do find consistency. So what is the MIDAS? The MIDAS is the 14-item score that we developed to do the intervention in PREDIMED. So the 14 points were to use olive oil as the exclusive culinary fat and to consume at least 4 tablespoons a day of olive oil, 3 pieces of fruit, 2 pieces of vegetables, at least 1 glass of wine with meals, to prefer poultry instead of red and processed meat, and to consume 3 times per week fish, 3 servings per week of fish at least, 3 servings per week at least of legumes, and 3 per week at least of 3 nuts, and to consume twice a week at least sofrito. It's a special sauce made with onion, olive oil, garlic, and tomato. And we discourage the consumption of sodas, commercial bakery, red and processed meats, butter, and margarine. So this is the Mediterranean diet adherence screener. This score was, and the cutoff points were developed using a case control study that we conducted in Navarra to look for the best cutoff points, and then we validated it with a hard biomarkers, with objective, biomarkers, and then it was also validated with an English version in UK, also in Brazil, also in Croatia, also in Portugal, also in Germany, in 7 other European countries, and very importantly, with metabolomics in the US, also with a replication in the nurses' health study and the health professionals follow-up study cohorts. So this is the validation study that we did, the analysis with more than 300 metabolites to try to reflect, to identify what was the metabolomic signature of the Mediterranean diet according to these 14 items. And you see that we found robust correlations, selecting 67 metabolites by artificial intelligence with elastic net regression. And these are the metabolites. I don't hope that you missed the names. You can find it in the European Heart Journal. But the important thing that was that what we found in Predimed as the metabolic signature of the Mediterranean diet was able to predict in the future the risk of cardiovascular disease, also with an internal validation using 1-year data of the Predimed, and also with external validation using the data of the American cohorts. Very importantly, even after adjusting for the self-reported data on the 14 points, we did find a protection against cardiovascular disease. These estimates are for 1 standard deviation. So this is a screenshot from a hospital in Chicago. So it is used in many countries, in many hospitals. It is a very quick assessment of how good is the diet, the dietary pattern. In 3-4 minutes, you can do the assessment. And in fact, recently, the American Heart Association endorsed this as a rapid diet assessment and screening tool, the MIDAS. So this is recommended by the American Heart Association to screen the diet. So what happened when we apply this to the Spanish population? The beliefs in Spain, according to this Eurobarometer, is that if you ask the Spanish adult population whether they follow a healthy or very healthy diet, 81% of them say, well, my diet is okay. Does this match with the reality? So what I did was to compare the 14 items with the data, the most recent data of the Spanish adult population according to the family budget survey. So there was no information about the exclusive use of olive oil or about sofrito. So we have dubbed on 2 of the points, but only fish, only reduction in butter and margarine, only reduction in less, to have at least 1 day without red or processed meat in a week, and also the reduction in sodas were the favorable points. But for the other items, the Spanish population were not following the 14 items. So in the best scenario, they had 6 points out of 14. So there is a large room to improve. And in the worst scenario, they have only 4 points. So we are very far from the Mediterranean diet nowadays in Spain. So there are a large need for improvement. And here we have a representative sample of the Spanish population. This is a little bit old, done by the group, by our colleagues in Madrid, in the Fernando Rodríguez Artalejo team in the University Autónoma of Madrid. And Everything that is in red is the failure to comply with that particular point of the 14 items of the Mediterranean diet score. So you see a small consumption of olive oil, a small fulfilling the 2 servings of vegetables per day, no compliance with the 3 fruits and so on. So we repeated this in the Sun cohort. This is a highly selected population because all of them are university graduates and more than 50% of them are health professionals. The bad news is that we found more or less the same, scoring higher than 9. You have there the percentages. It is very, very low, but fortunately, it is little by little increasing because this is that dynamic cohort and we are incorporating new participants every year. So this is the Spanish version of the 14 items of the MIDAS. And what we have done is to publish these 3 books with the aim to the general population in Spain, explaining in high detail how to follow this. These books have been published by Planeta, that is the largest publisher in Spain, and they are bestsellers now. So they are reaching a lot of the big size of the population. So my last words are about sustainability and economical aspect, affordability of the Mediterranean dietary pattern. The first paper that we did was to look at 4 dimensions of sustainability in the Sun cohort. This was a work directed by Mayra Bess, my collaborator, in the Sun cohort. So we saw that the higher the adherence to the Mediterranean diet, the lower the greenhouse gas emissions, but we also saw very similar results regarding the use of land, of water, and energy. So we were looking at the environmental impact of the Mediterranean diet, and we saw what you have in the lower part is the score developed by my good friend Antonia Picopoulo, the 0 to 9 score of adherence to the Mediterranean diet. And you see that as the adherence is higher, the lower the use of resources and also the greenhouse gas emissions. And in this paper, it's a little bit complicated, but we tried to see 3 dietary patterns. The Western dietary pattern, stacked as a factor analysis, the Mediterranean dietary pattern score with the score proposed by Antonia, and the pro-vegetarian dietary pattern that gives positive points to vegetable origins foods. So, and we see several outputs. The first output is to see what is the rate advancement period for a composite outcome of all-cause mortality, cardiovascular disease, breast cancer, and type 2 diabetes. Then the environmental impact, you see that, and then the costs. So the Mediterranean diet in blue is the less affordable diet, but it has a very good impact regarding environmental issues, and it has the best. The rate advancement period is the more or less the number of years that you advance or delay the occurrence of the composite outcome. The rate, in fact, it hasn't any individual interpretation. So this is a strong reason to use the taxes that are currently applied to sodas, or they are going to apply then to junk food to subsidize the beneficial elements of the Mediterranean diet in order to close the gap between rich and poor people regarding affordability of a healthy diet. I think that this makes a strong case for that, and also thinking in the environment. So thank you very much. I want to tell you that this is a tree in the Garden of Olives in Jerusalem, where Jesus Christ was praying. This is a millenary tree, olive tree. So as we are here, I wanted to put this to you. Thank you very much.